So, one aspect when we're dealing in the training the children is we're looking at, so if we're trying to make someone God conscious, that means then we're having to work on the consciousness. Right? So it's about elevating the consciousness. That brings it up to the transcendental platform. Right? So that's why the society is an International Society for Krishna Consciousness, right? So that aspect then we have to see is that what is conscious, what are the levels of consciousness, so that we're actually aware of this, right? Because the natural first stage that the child's at is going to be the position of anamoy. They're just going to look at the senses and specifically eating, right? Because it's all about eating, everything goes in the mouth. Test whether it's edible, right? So the analyzation process is going on, but it's simply for the end result of if it's food, right? So if this, as they grow, of course, their understanding of food and things like that, they expand other aspects of the senses, and then it's all about what I can gain with my senses, right? Does that make sense? So one can remain on this platform for one's whole life, right? So then there's the aspect of, so how to move beyond. So the natural position is that there's always going to be the element that they're going to notice that the parents are there, other people are there, other members of the family. Right? So seeing that, then that next platform of pranamoy, or life, they see that there's the element of life, not just of food, but there's actually living entities, there's life, there's interaction based on this. Right? So if it's not that next stage, yeah, it means if the next stage aspect isn't cultivated, then it's okay, this life, this other living entities, but it still comes back to my sense gratification. So there has to be the element of that cooperation, that working together, the elements that go into that. But the whole point is it's still that cooperation is just going to bring about the concept of sense gratification, what I can get from this. Right? So then you have the aspect of, okay, this sense gratification is there, all these cooperations are there, but why would this work? Why is it that you cooperate, it gets a better result? You do certain endeavors, it gets a better result. That's the whole knowledge and your education, your science is all based on that there are formulas that function, that work, that are perceived to work, or thought of to work, perceived to work, actually do work. All these different aspects. That's because then the next level of consciousness, that's because there's a supreme, or there's God who is making this work, right? It's His creation, His order, His law, right? So then that's the next natural support, but it's not the... So bringing that in, then it's a matter of, these are the rules, this is how it works. So then, how to see that what I'm doing is in line with, what is being understood, what is being offered, right? This level of appreciation of the laws of how the universe goes, and that therefore it's not just arbitrary. You have a particular nature, you fit into this particular aspect of it, right? You're an intellectual, you fit into that part. You're an administrator, you fit into there. You fit into this. Everything has its place where it fits, and then that fitting there, then that performance of that duty, then the society goes nicely, right? So that's why the second level pranamoy works, right? And then why you have facility for the first level of anamoy, right? There's no sense gratification if there's no economic development. The reason there's economic development is because there's dharma, there's laws, there's rules, there's structure in the universe, right? But one can then see that beyond that, the next aspect is that, but actually it's not about just the sense gratification and all that, because even you get the facilities, you do everything, there's still not the satisfaction to the living entity, to the soul, right? Because the soul is looking for something else, something more, right? So that looking for that more, then that is understood when we add in the equation of not just the structure of the universe, how we fit in this, that, but who are we? Right? So being the soul, right, being the spirit, that then takes it to another aspect, that's therefore the aspect of eternality, right? Then there's something higher, then that connection with the Lord becomes more of a point of discussion, right? But we see is from that, then because of that, then it makes the next level downward better, right? Each higher level you work at, it makes the one below it work better. So if you understand I'm not the body, then you can do your duties more nicely, because then you're not thinking that this is me. So you'll do a better job at it. You can see the longer term. I do the work, I can get long-term results. I can either do pious works and get elevated to the heavenly planets, or I can do detached work and become liberated. So I can look at the longer term rather than the immediate, which is the first two levels are looking at. But then there's the element of, okay, so that addresses the soul, that makes it work, but the endeavor that I'm making and the facilities I get ultimately won't satisfy me. So getting a better material situation, elevating myself to the heavenly planets, that's not actually going to satisfy me, the soul. So the element of the liberation is there, but at the same time as the soul likes to be active. As you think of activity produces happiness, right? But on the temporary platform, it doesn't. Therefore, if we look at it logically, naturally, the soul being spiritual, right? And we're looking for happiness there, that must mean that there is a happiness based on spiritual activity, spiritual endeavor, right? So then that's going to bring one to the fifth level of consciousness, or actually God conscious, dynamic, interactive relationship with God, and that aspect. Does this make sense? So the idea is that when you're dealing with the children, it's a matter, you have to get them through all these stages. It's not just a matter of, well, they'll figure it out for themselves, because that's not exactly how it works, right? Everything else, if that's the thing, then let them figure everything out. But no, you want them to teach, you have to learn this, you have to do so many things, how they're talking, you have to improve that, how they're dressing, they improve that, how they're dealing with people, they improve that. The God consciousness is the highest, they'll just work it out. That's like saying, we really got to, get into this, this third grade mathematics and stuff like that. We really have to, put in the effort, but, the quantum, they'll just work that out themselves. That'll naturally just, of course, happen. Does that make sense? No, it just, so the whole idea is that if you want them to be God conscious, then you actually have to be aware that there's levels of consciousness to make sure they're moving through it. Does that make sense? So how that goes through, that's of course through knowledge, right? Knowledge and practice. And then of course the most effective will be, if you're doing that, then it'll be natural for them, because they're hearing what to be done, and then they're seeing. So even if one is not on the top level of consciousness, if one's endeavoring for it, then you can show them how to make that sincere endeavor. Right? And then they'll naturally progress. Does that make sense? So it's not that, oh, when I'm perfect I can do this. No. Does that make sense? You have the father is a farmer, and he teaches the basic principles of concepts of economics, and his son then opens a business, and he's, very wealthy in that. So the principles even go beyond, because there's something there that you're working at. So you're working at Krishna consciousness, then that endeavor or commitment to Krishna consciousness, that you can give to the children. Then they can continue that themselves. Does that make sense? But it doesn't mean that we're not continuing ourselves, because the point is that it is self-realization. Right? So the individual has to be absorbed in Krishna. That's the idea. So if we're trying to do that, then the children will be inspired. They'll try to do it. If we're not doing it, they'll not do it. We partially do it, they'll partially do it. Does that make sense? So it'll be very similar. There's always that worry that the child's going to be different than myself, especially in the modern scenario. In the teen years, they do their own thing. But don't worry, they're doing their own thing exactly the way you do your thing. What they're doing is different, but the principle that they're basing it on is exactly the same. Don't worry. How much you're self-centered, they're self-centered. You're just into what you're doing, they're just into what they're doing. You understand? give an example. Hopefully this is not too close to the bone, but, you know, got to try to make it practical. Okay, let us say we come to the temple once a week, right? And come for the Sunday program, we come, we do all the nice things, come in, you know, darshan, the kirtan, the shad, you know, we want to do it nicely, so we come in, we put in our 3 hours, we do it nicely, okay? Right? Sounds good, no? But what then we're seeing is that, you know, when the kid's small, they come along, they're doing this and that, you know, they're playing Donga, they're doing all the different things, right? But then when they get bigger, they don't want to come with us on Sunday for the program. They want to go out and do something with their friends. So why aren't they like us? Right? That's the natural thing, you know. I've been telling them because but they're not becoming like us. But then look at it. In reality, they're exactly like you. Exactly. Why? Who decided you're coming once a week on Sunday? Yourself. So in other words, you've worked Krishna consciousness into your life how you think it works. Okay, I'm busy doing the work, we're making money, we're doing this and that, and then so many things, so that on Sunday or on Saturday, we work it in. So they're doing exactly the same thing. I got my life, I got my friends, I got my, you know, all the different things, and I work in Krishna consciousness when I want. So, you know, they may come to big festivals when there's more happening, you know, other kids are there, and but they're exactly the same as you. You're thinking they're different. No, they're exactly the same. Because it's not that, it's based on, you know, what is the step? Why do I choose what I want? It's not based on authority, it's based on myself. So the kid's doing exactly based on themselves. Does this make sense? But the adult is thinking, oh, my child's so different. What's happening? They don't want to come to the temple when I want to. No, they're coming to, you go to the temple when you want to. And they go to the temple when they want to. Now, that's the same. You understand? Just the form is different. Does that make sense? So that's the things, you have to work on these things, that you have to actually be aware. It's not automatic. It means automatic, you'll get an animal. You understand? You want a human, you got to work at it. Right? That's the difference, because when the child is born, the first birth is animal birth. Because they just eat, sleep like this. That's what they do. Then when someone comes in contact with God consciousness, commit to that, that's the second birth. Right? That's the human birth. Does that make sense? So that's the concept. Right? So they're born in human form, but they don't actually take advantage of it until they understand and then commit themselves to it. Then that becomes solid. Then that's human life. Does this make sense? So when they're inquiring, if someone once said, oh, Prabhupada, you know, says we make the kids, you know, and that, and so do we get the benefit of having made a devotee, like you go out, preach, make a devotee? Prabhupada said when they're 16, and they decided for themselves that their commitment to Krishna consciousness, then you get the benefit. But before that, they're just doing it because they're part of the family and you're doing it. So that's when you know. Does that make sense? So what does that mean? Then you have to put in the effort. You have to actually put in the training, explain everything, like we were saying before. So it's not just explain the material things, you also have to explain the spiritual things. So all the things, what physically is to be done, emotionally, socially, intellectually, spiritually, all these things have to be covered. You deal with all these, then you get something. Does that make sense? Okay, then you get complete. But if you just take it for granted that, oh, they'll automatically grow up and do, because, you know, because that sense of attachment, we just think it happens automatically. You know, it's just like, you know, the boy-girl get together. You know, it's just going to be a beautiful life automatically. Right? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? You know, the music plays, you know, the camera pans back, you know, the credits come up. It's perfect. Right? Does that make sense? Is there a movie about the next day? You know, and they lived happily ever after. So then, let's go forward a week or 3 years or 10 years and see this happily ever after. Any movie about it? Any book about it? Nothing. Right? So So this idea that automatically, there is no such thing. Everything happens because you work. It's beautiful because someone worked at it. You know? The program's arranged nicely because someone worked at it. You know, the food is great because someone worked at it. Does that make sense? Everything happens because someone worked at it. It doesn't happen automatically. So the same way as kids won't grow up automatically. It means they'll grow up as animals, yes, automatically. But if you want them to be something else other than that, then you have to train. Otherwise, they'll grow up, it's all about themselves. So then in this process, of course, comes along the element that we have to analyze, well, am I doing it just for myself? Because they'll become the same. You know? But because they're an individual, it's not necessarily that their selfish, self-centered attitude will be the same as yours. They'll have the same self-centered attitude, that's guaranteed, don't worry. But that it'll have the detail that you have, that's another thing. That, unless there's training, why should they do what you're doing? Right? And why isn't, oh, because this is what we've always done. That's not an answer. You know, so why is it that you're doing what is always done? What's important about that, doing that? What's important about tradition? Explain that, then they'll buy it. But to just say, no, this is what we do, who buys it? So that's, yes.
It sounds more much like you're speaking of the principle of sacrifice, yajna. That in any endeavor, in order for it to be fabulous, there has to be yajna.
Yes.
Sacrifice. And if you don't make the effort, then you'll be making sacrifice on the other side.
Yes.
Because it won't be fabulous.
Yes.
But if you put in the effort to make the sacrifice, and you know that selflessness that you're speaking of, not doing it for selfishness, but
Yes.
selflessness as a sacrifice, then you'll get higher, more auspicious results.
Yes.
It's just an observation.
Yes, yes. No,
I'm questioning if I'm understanding you.
Yes, yes. No, that's very, yeah. Because the point is, in other words, if a result comes from endeavor, lack of result comes from lack of endeavor. You know, because the negative is the lack of the positive. You know, so that they're, okay, yes, you've made the endeavor to make no endeavor. You know, you've thought about it and decided to do nothing, right? You know, so that deep, how do you say? Reflection. Yeah, reflection, and so you come up with the idea, I'm going to do nothing. Yes, so you get nothing. So, yes, it's true. Whatever you put in, that's what you get back. It's this idea, because it's like this, what is it? What's the idea? How does profit work? Right? Investment. You invest, you get a result. No investment, you don't get a result. So that's how relationships are going to work, how the family is going to work, the training of the children is going to work. You invest, you'll get that result. It's not automatic. You're saying, oh, spiritual life's automatic. Yeah, take your business as automatic. Don't invest. Just let it happen. You feel like it. You want to wake up in the morning and you go out to the door, you open the door to go get your newspaper, and the street's just crowded. All the people and everything like that are all there, and all the cameras and all the people they're trying to get the first news and all that, because you're #1 in Forbes magazine, right? You know, you made no endeavor, it just happened, right? Because you wanted it. Isn't that how it works? Right? Everybody's had that experience, right? You haven't? Something's wrong? Huh?
Because he's not sincere.
Ah, yeah. You understand? Nothing happens just because you want to have a great dinner. You just sit there and it just happens, right? You're sitting there on your couch and then suddenly, you blink your eyes and sitting on the coffee table, there's everything that you wanted, dreamt of to eat, right? Isn't that how it works? No, everything is because you work. Your house is nice because you work. Your clothes are nice, you work. Your car is nice, you work. Everything is nice because you work. So the kids will be nice because you work. It's just how it means we're so committed to the process of economic development But it's the same thing. You invest in economics, you get back economics. Right? You invest in emotions, you get back emotions. You invest in knowledge, you get back knowledge. You invest in spirit, you get back spirit. So you invest in God consciousness, you get back that. So it's going to happen. So you invest in that training in the kids, you'll get back that training in the kids. It's standard. Does this make sense? So why we're discussing, because otherwise there's two sentiments here. One is my kid will always be perfect, because I'm perfect, of course, so it's automatic, right? And the other is that spiritual life, that's not something you endeavor, it just happens, because you make an endeavor that's mundane. You understand? So these two sentiments then get in the way of the actual development. Yes?
If the kid asks any question,
Right.
what level you need to answer?
To what level? One is, obviously it's to the level you know. He's saying, because it's hard to answer beyond what you know. But the other is what's appropriate for, it means you have to take it all the way through to what is the knowledge, what are the effects of the knowledge, why it's important, all these different things like that. There's this idea is that the kid should figure it out himself. But
I can give an example.
Okay, give an example.
Why do my friends eat meat? So what level of answer should we be giving?
Because their families eat, they don't know any better. That's how they've grown up. They're working in a culture that's what they do. They don't notice that it's not an ideal thing to do. They're talking about everybody working together, cooperating, and making it nice for everybody and not discriminating. But they don't have a wide enough range to understand that the animals are also part of the scene. It's not that you exploit one group and the other group benefits. If we look at that, okay, the rich exploit the poor, or the whites exploit everybody else, or this or that, then it doesn't work out. So why is it the animals aren't counted in that also? Because they're also living entities. The soul is there. They don't know that, so it's out of ignorance that they do this. And most don't even know what it means. Most think they don't understand there's a connection between the animal and what's on the plate. They don't make that connection. For most Westerners, you make that connection, they become vegetarians on the spot. It's just they don't think about it. There's some good old down home operas. It doesn't matter because they know the connection. They've been out there and they catch the lizard, they roast it, they eat it. So that it works for them. But then for most of them, it's just they don't make the connection. It's ignorance. That's that one, but everything else also you have to go through. Because it's not just, it's bad. Why is it bad? What's the reasons? So like that. Explain it to them, then they may have influence on their friends. Like that. I know one devotee that he was, he was Western family, but there was, I think, some Punjabis living next door. And then at 9, he just decided to be a vegetarian. So he didn't eat in his house. He always ate next door to Punjabi's house because they were vegetarians. So he grew up eating Indian food because they were vegetarians because his mom didn't know what to do with them. I mean, he lived in his house, interact, everything there, but meals were next door. So it's they work it out. Yes.
How about you stated about being a vegetarian? Of course, it's about meat. How about you are not eating the meat inside one, but you are using the outside one, which is the leather. You have a bag in your car, which is maybe a good kind of car, and your furnitures are all leather. So what's the connection about being not eating and using the outside, which is the same feature of...
I mean, it can be the same or it can be different. Because animals die and then their skins are left. So In the Vedic cultures, after the animal dies, that's when you take the skin and you use that. That's how mridangams are made. Is that, you know, when the animal dies and they skin the animal, then they use it like that. At least the good mridanga players like this. So it's not a problem that it's being used. It's just a matter of when you're using it, when you're collecting it.
Does the capsule need it?
Sorry?
Does the capsule need the skin?
Does
Does the animal still need the skin?
Yeah, once they're dead, no. But while they're alive, generally it's highly recommended. It works really well. It keeps them warm in the winter, and, you know, helps keep the flies down, you know. Yeah.
Alright, you were explaining how if we want kids to take up certain qualities, that we need to be an example for that. So as we grow in Krishna consciousness, we know what's the ideal level in Krishna consciousness,
Yes.
and we are trying to achieve it.
Right.
So on the way, we do make mistakes.
Right.
So how do we avoid that mistake being replicated by the kids, or do we explain to them that, you know, I'm also on the way, so you please, or how do we work this out?
Means you're making a mistake or they're making
Yeah,
a
I
mistake?
make mistakes. As I grow, you know, like, as I'm trying to reach the ideal state in Krishna consciousness, you know, on the way.
Yeah, so then it's explained, and it's a process, and so everyone's working with their own particular, you know, anarthas, their own, like that. So it has to be, you know, straightforward, as presented in a way that's usable for them. You know what I'm saying? You know, so what applies. You just always have to remember that kids are a lot more smart and observant than we give them credit for. Does that make sense? So they can understand. It means we're just getting into it now, but the point is that they can understand that from the age they're at. You know, saying we're taking it, okay, because we're older and more mature, that's why we understand it. But the point is that they can understand it from a much younger age. Right? You know, I mean, Dhruva Maharaj at 5, you know, Prahlad Maharaj at 6. Not Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj he was also like 5. Who's the other one? Narad Muni. I think he was 6. You know, Shankaracharya took 6 sannyas when he was 6. You know, so it's not that they can't. It's, you know, it depends on the individual. But they have this idea that they're small, they can't understand. No, it's not like that. It's you take them as far as they can go. Right? And then, because you're progressing, then you'll be able to take them farther. And if they progress faster than you, then you listen to them. And then you'll progress, and they're explaining to you, that will help them progress. So either way, you're teaching them, you progress, they teach you, you know, it works out. Is that okay? Something else? Yes.
One question. As you
Yes.
were mentioning about 5 types of consciousness,
5 levels of
5 levels
consciousness.
of consciousness.
Yes.
So, with respect to giving knowledge to the kids,
Yes.
how much weightage do we give for each of them?
How much weight is? It's whatever is the platform that they're functioning. So whatever level they're at, you always take it up. It means you're always trying to present the Krishna consciousness, but you want to make sure that you've covered all the levels in between.
So we go top down.
It means you always start top down, but the point is you start from the top and take it down to whatever level they're at, and then because the Krishna consciousness is there, it's a matter of there's all the steps in between to get them there, right? So, because otherwise, then we take it that there's, you know, there's my material life, and there's the things that we do in the practical life, and then there's Krishna consciousness. It's kind of like a side, like a hobby, you know. You like the things you do in your hobby, you know, that's there, and it makes the hobby go well. But then there's also what you have to do for everything else. But the point is Krishna consciousness includes all those other things. So you have to be able to show that. Otherwise, then it just becomes, you know, just a part of the life like that. Just, you know, like that. Just, you know, a nice thing, a pious thing to do. You know, it's like that. We do that. We're devotees, and you know, and so we do these things, and that's all. So rather than no, there's more there. They have to be able to see how it applies in their lives, because in a simple way, they can understand all the aspects of the philosophy on their level. You know, it's just maybe not as complicated as ours, but it doesn't mean that it's not as meaningful to them. It's like you see 3-year-olds are having this whole scene going on like that. We're just seeing a bunch of kids, but in their mind, this is full. It's the experience they're getting is just the same as a bunch of adults together and interacting. There's no difference in the involvement and the fullness. Right? Is that it? Yeah. Something else? Yes.
So, when something doesn't come naturally, we need to practice it.
Yes.
So let's say the top level of consciousness, enlightenment. Does that mean that we need to pause in all the activities during the day and then raise our level of consciousness there before we actually execute
the activities of the day? No, the activities of the day are duties we have to do, but the point is we're also endeavoring to raise the consciousness, in practical, but at the same time when we have those moments to reflect, then we're seeing how do we connect the standard to what I'm doing? How does it apply? How does, you know what I'm saying? You can't stop what you're doing, but it means that you're trying to work this in that understanding, because the more you understand it, does that make sense? Do businesses stop, because they're educating their people how to do it better? No, it's the same thing.
But I'm just saying, like, the usual decisions that we make, we might be used to making it in a different level of consciousness,
Yes.
but we want to try to get ourselves to the topmost.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, we should, before we actually make a decision that we used to, we should try to reflect.
Oh, okay.
And
Yes. Means if you have that opportunity, then it means it's not going to affect. It's not that you're cooking unless you can't stop halfway through the cooking to make the consciousness raised. Because somehow or another the preparations have this tendency they keep cooking, so they get burnt or so at that point you may not stop.
Exactly, and I was thinking my day would be really slow because I'd be pausing in between every activity.
No, so the point is you just keep practicing, trying to make that connection, and by that practice gradually it'll come. It's a gradual process. Does that make sense? So if you have the time when you can sit more and reflect and see, okay, I did this during the day, how could I have improved that? What would have been a better way to do that? Then you do that.
Would it be too mental to be trying to reflect with everything throughout the day?
It just depends on you, what you can do. If you can do like that, if that works for you. Otherwise you do and then reflect it. However it works.
What's ideal?
Whatever works. Because you're working with your conditioning, and conditioning is varied according to individuals. So it's what works for the individual.
Okay, I understand that. But what if we use the conditioning as an excuse for not?
That's not good. It doesn't matter what the excuse is, then we don't, because it's a matter of, if we sincerely want to know, we want to apply, then we can't use it as an excuse, because it's not an excuse, it's what we're working with. It's not that, oh, I'm too busy. The point is what are you busy for? Right? All duties are for what purpose? Ultimately, they have to be to enhance God consciousness. Otherwise, then they're just, sophisticated duties of animals, right? I probably use the term polished animals, very sophisticated, like that, this nice suit and everything like that. But he's still an animal. It's just, you can't see his fangs and claws. He's got them, but does that make sense? So the idea is that what works for you, that's what you do. So that's what I'm saying, is if it works, you do it, how you say, contemplate, then do, then contemplate, do them simultaneously. It doesn't matter, Because manana means you're going to be contemplating, you're going to be practicing, you're going to be doing both. So you have to see that both aspects are there. You're contemplating, okay, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, what are the motives, how to improve the quality of that. And you have to be applying it and then trying to use what you've understood, right? Does that make sense? So they kind of like leapfrog. I contemplate, therefore my endeavor is better. And because I've endeavored, I've seen so many things, now my contemplation will improve. So it just keeps nourishing each other until that comes to the point of realization. Does that make sense?
And so during the contemplation, it needs to be connected to, let's say, sadhu or sastra.
Yes. Otherwise, then it means that the process of mental speculation means, in other words, where we're analyzing and trying to see all the different ways we could work with it. But if it's not based in authority of Guru, Sadhu, or Shastra, then it will, what's going to be its basis? Why will we choose how will we choose how we categorize it? How will we choose, what are the options? How will we choose which option we take, unless it's based on authority? Yeah. Otherwise, you could come up with so many ways, that, you know what I'm saying?
So that whole process then is anandamoy, like.
Means if its purpose is anandamoy, then it has that effect. In other words, you get whatever effect is your intent. Right? Does that make sense? So that's why one's always endeavoring for pure devotional service, because the intent is to please Krishna. Right? But if our intent is, just to gain knowledge or just to gain facility, then it will get whatever level we're working at. But if you're working at anandamai, then the other levels are included in it if you're aware. It means they're included whether you're aware or not. You can take advantage. That's another thing. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes.
You're describing these aspects as levels.
Right.
And often in the yoga literature they're described as coverings, layers.
Yes.
So when you use the word levels, it sounds like a hierarchy of consciousness.
Yes.
And another way is as the example of like layers of an onion.
Right.
That need to be dissolved.
Right.
That only the pure consciousness is layers.
Yes.
Can you speak of that?
The comparison between the two.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like, let's say, go back to your onion. Okay, so it means, in using the onion, what you're trying to get to the middle of the onion. Because I guess there's something in the middle that's of value or something, right? So that what's in the middle, that's anandamoy. And so then you're adding covering. So anamoy means you have 4 layers of unnecessary covering. If you're on pranamoy, you have 3 layers. You're on anamoy, you have 2 layers. You're on jnanamoy, you have 1 layer. And if you're on anandamoy, there's no layers. So they're layers, so you're trying to get back to that.
Yeah. But the way you describe it as levels, it seems like each level is important for achieving the higher one. When you describe it as layers, it seems like you just want to dissolve them and get rid of them.
Yes, but when you get rid of them, which do you get rid of first? Do you get rid of the second one or something? This is not this is not dim muck here. It's just like I hit the onion and the second one disappears, but the first and the third is still there. You know what I'm saying? It's a matter of you have to be able to you deal with the first one. In other words, if the first one is there, that's the first one you have to deal with. Now, if in your consciousness the first one's not there, it's the second one, then you have to deal with that. So you're trying to get down. Another way you can look at it is, so we see the element of how the layers working is the kinds of false ego that you're dealing with. So the grossest one is you're dealing with the physical identity. So in other words, the first covering is you have you said, the element false ego, and that's identified with the coverings of earth, water, fire, air, ether. Right? So those two go together. So that's those stuff. I don't remember if you remember when we were in Vrindavan, we were doing the Manu, and it was talking about those 4 levels of that, and then you found in Bhagavatam where they each had their Taijasa, Tamas, they had their different names. So then the next is the intelligence and the senses. Right? Then that's another one. Then the next is the mind, and the emotions and all that. But then you get rid of all that. You've gotten rid of at least the gross material, gross and subtle material. But it still leaves the karma sharir. Right? So you may have gotten rid of the stula sharir, the gross body, the linga sharir, the subtle body. But the karma sharir, or the cause of all that's still there, because you still think I'm the controller and enjoyer. Then when that's gone, then you're left with just the purely spiritual. So these are theirs that the anamoy means it's the grossest, because I'm the body, it's about the senses, that's all there is. So that's the covering around the soul. We're looking at it because it gets up to there, but it can be used in the spherical sense also. So there's a progression of the consciousness, because it's just like, let's say, if I'm making a diagram of circles, circles, I only put the name on one side, and I look at, that slice, like that. So it's just a matter of whether you're talking about it as the whole thing or just that identifying the slice. Does that make sense? So that's why it's called kosha, because it's layer, but because that's the grossest amount. Then you add in, because that's just the body, then you add in a little bit of the senses, the intelligence, how to put the society together a little bit. Then I get to monomoy, because then I see that. Then I get to the point of the soul, but it's still not the soul free from the idea of the controller and enjoyer. When you get rid of that, then you get to the level of bhakti. Does that work? Yeah. So it's just, that's why in the Vedic, it's just, that's the meaning of vichars. You look at it from different angles, but you're still seeing the same thing. So there's a connection between those angles, like that. But it's because the angle itself has uniqueness, then sometimes it has its own vocabulary to define it. But actually, it's just the same thing. That's why sometimes the acharya is explaining one thing, they use one word, and in another place they use a different word. You think it's two different things, but it's actually the same thing. It's just the angle is different. So that's the idea, is that one learns from these different angles so that you can see which one to apply at a particular time, therefore which wordings you're using, which, all these different things. Is that? Yes.
So Maharaj, can you give an example? Because children, like you were mentioning, they are mostly in this animal. So could you give an example of how you will interact with a child to bring him to higher consciousness in the interaction? Because naturally the child will be absorbed in central things. And
just explaining why they're doing something. Does that make sense? They're doing something, why should they be doing something, or why shouldn't they be doing something? Because you have what you should do, you have what you shouldn't do. Right? You always have yama and niyama.
So you mean it's in the explanation that you try to bring it all
Yes.
the way to...
Yes. So because the whole point is it's an educational process is what's going on. Right? The difficulty is generally children are seen from the emotional aspect that they add to life, which they do. But then there has to be the element that they have to be educated, so that's the intellectual part. So that's the part that most don't get involved in. Does that make sense?
Oh, they just get involved with the whole, they're cute, this, that.
Yes, like that. And they are cute for a while, and then at one point they're not as cute anymore. Right? So that's the whole point. So if you haven't educated them, then their non-cute is really non-cute. Right? Is that what I'm saying? So the whole point is that you have to, that process goes on all the way through.
So the trap imagined parents often fall is the child becomes just some kind of an emotional gratification.
Basically, yeah. Because it's natural, that aspect is there. But the point is it has two aspects. One, the child has to be trained because they're going to grow up as an individual and take part in the society as an individual. But the other thing is that since everything is meant to become God conscious, so therefore dealing with the kids is one of the ways to become God conscious. And how's that going to happen? Because in deal with them, you have to see it from a God conscious point. You have to explain God consciousness. You understand? So the point is being Krishna's creation, everything can be connected. But you have to actually connect it. You know what I'm saying? It is connected, but you're not going to get the benefit until you connect it. You know what I'm saying? Food is nourishing. It's just the way it is. Whether there is food there or not, the principle of food is nourishing. But you get the benefit when you eat. You don't eat, you don't get it. You don't get the benefit. Does that make sense? So the adult, besides that, in other words, they're cultivating their Krishna consciousness through the medium of the emotion of the family relationships and interactions. But if they only cultivate the interactions just for the emotional benefit that they get, then eventually, being that you're only working with the modes of nature, it will be temporary, it will run out. You know what I'm saying? But if you're cultivating the spiritual, then everything can be accommodated. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's the thing. It's the spiritual, as we said, the higher level of consciousness already includes the lower. Does that make sense? Right. You see families that have the highest sense of, duty and what you should do have the best relationships.
Yes.
You understand? So that means it includes the lower. And then probably they all sit down and have a good time when they eat, and there's lots to eat, and lots of varieties, and plenty of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then the ones that don't have that, it's not much variety and never enough.
Even if there is enough, it's never enough.
That's another thing, but I'm just talking about just on food. Does that make sense? So the whole point is what there is no loss. There's the thought that if I apply these other things, I'll miss out on the. No, you won't. Because the whole point is then it will actually last. Because if you have that relationship based on all these levels, and you're educating them, then the relationship lasts. But if they have to work it out themselves, then what's the position of the parent as guru? What have they done? They had to figure it out themselves. They have to get through high school themselves. They have to work it all out themselves. So what is the, of course the parent is adding a stable environment in which to exist, but existence and interaction are two different things. So since the parent is only supplying the existence, then the parent can't expect there's going to be emotional interaction. So the daughter is very comfortable to sit there on the couch and SMS all day. So she exists in your house. She's not sitting in someone else's house. She doesn't want to sit in someone else's house. She wants to sit in your house. But since there's not a cultivation of the relationship, therefore, then there's nothing coming back in the relationship. But existence is there. You understand?
That's pretty much summarized Western culture.
Yes, because that's what they look for. They just look at the external, but it's not about it. But what I'm saying is what you put in is what you get back. You put in that emotional time. It's not just when you want, it's when it's needed.
But for us in the West, because we didn't have that, things which seem so obvious sometimes when you see people are from India or Indonesia when they visit these countries, these things seem so obvious to them because they were grown up in this kind of more fulfilling way of existence. For us, we were so much about the teams and the space and if I look back at, my parents, they were quote unquote good people, they did everything they could, but in terms of relationship, it was very, very shallow. They didn't they didn't know how to do it. So when we as devotees were trying to, become devotees and give that to our children or to the children of our friends or whatever, it's very difficult to, it's almost seem artificial for us because we're not really, it's not part of our experience basically. It's just like a concept that has no resonance. So I guess how do we, coming from that kind of cultural handicap, how do we approach the whole thing of being successful at family life, relationship, some things which is basically in our blind spot?
Yes, very nice. The first thing is to be aware. It means you can't learn something new unless you're aware of it. Right? Otherwise, there's so many opportunities to learn so many things, but because we're not aware, we don't pick that up. Right? So by being aware, then we'll try to take advantage and we'll contemplate what we've heard, what we've seen, what we've experienced, and try to put that together. Because the point is we hear from the scriptures what's there, that others are around. And like you said, there's the advantage is that you can look around and there's tons of people that are not from that background. In fact, yeah, like if you go downtown, hard to find someone who is from, the local. At the same time is that then these other cultures are coming here, but then they're working very hard to become local. Like the other day, we parked the car, got out of the car, there's this, obviously Oriental person, in a suit and that, and he's talking with some of the ladies or walking, that looked like they were business, things like that. He had a really thick Australian accent. So he must have been born here and that's not something you pick up overnight, like that. So it's just, I heard, and then you think it's, some, like that, and you look up and then it's different. So they're learning this, but the point is this has to learn that, and that shouldn't forget that. So there is, if you want, there's the opportunity. But if you don't know, if you don't understand that there is a lack, so it's not a matter of getting mental about it, it's a matter of that's the situation you have. Right? Just like if you figure out you don't have any money, no use getting mental about it, do something about it. Make a plan, make an effort, and until it works. So the same way is that if one finds one lacks culture, then it's a matter of being aware that culture is important, why it's important, what are the examples of culture, what are the principles it's based on, and then try to apply it in your life. You apply it, and you look around and see how others are applying it.
I think that's one problem is saying that you wanted all these Western devotees to spend some time in India to
that was always a record.
to learn the culture. Because
Otherwise, then the other alternative is, how do you say, eat lots of yogurt. So that associating with culture. May not work because I think beer is cultured also. And they do a lot of that association. Doesn't seem to be helping. So may not be a good how you say, practical plan.
Because when you speak, I can relate easily with the concepts you're bringing in.
Yes, but that's the first step.
But where I feel a little blind is just how does it translate in
But if you have faith that that's real, then you will try to make that endeavor. But if one is always, because it's different than how we perceive things, if we're always fighting about that or trying to say, no, but we are conditioned in this way, so our conditioning is fine. No, the conditioning is not fine. Any conditioning is not good. If you're in the material world, that's not right, even if you learn Brahma. It's not the position the soul should be in. But as you move down on the food chain and move outside, you know, of the Vedic standards, then it just gets worse and worse. So it's not that, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I guess my question was, Maharaj, would you give some example how the culture is articulated around, you know, all that?
But you have to give us specific, because it's like saying, you know, could you,
Well, I mean, yeah.
you know,
Yes. It's a big question.
yeah.
Yeah.
Means a general question gets a general answer, a specific question gets a specific answer.
I mean, how the parents, the father and the child, the mother and the child, what would be the general cultural thing, how this education is applied, especially at a very young age when the child is just...
No, the point is, it's like this. Can a dog figure out your mood?
Yes.
Right? Means, in fact, they figure it out better than most adults do. Right? So, how is that? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Because they work just on that level. So that's where the kid is at. The kid picks it up. It's all about mood. We're thinking only when they're big they'll understand. They understand from the beginning. You know what I'm saying? The baby knows if you care or not. Why is that? Everybody else is with the baby, and the baby's happy, but as soon as the mom works in the room, then they want to go with the mother. Why? Because the mother puts in more attention. They know. They can discriminate. They're not stupid. You know what I'm saying? So that's the whole thing. How you explain things, how you deal, the tone of voice, all these different things, they pick all that up. So it has to start from the beginning. You know, we figure when they're bigger, then we'll start. No, you have to start from the beginning. But it's in context of their position. You know, what is connected with them. So you have to present that education in relationship to them at their position. But you have to, it's not that this adult idea is that, oh, we as adults understand, because where does adult start? Because adult means whatever age I am, that's adult, and everything below that's kids. But if you remember back when you're 16, then you look up at adults. So anyone from 16 to 30 was equals. You know, and, you know, at 30, then they're in the next group. But up to there, you know, so it's just, where does that start? So that's the difficulty. So that training starts right from the beginning. It means they're not much interactive other than eating. They don't do anything, right? Until they start crawling around, they don't really do anything. That they get involved in something they shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So when they're involved in things they should do and shouldn't do, then there should be guidance from that point. Right? When Prabhupada says, you know, the kids aren't, how do you say, what is the term he uses? I can't remember the term, the specific term he uses. But the point is that up to 5 they're not regulated. Whenever they're hungry they eat, when they're tired they sleep. You know, when they want to play, they play. So even if it's at midnight and they want to play, you're playing with them. You know, it's not about, you know, mommy's got to sleep. No, it's about, you know, baby's got to play. You know, that's what's happening. You know what I'm saying? But the point is how they deal in all these things, you have to see that it's progressive. Like that. Does that make sense? Right, at 5, then you can regulate. You know, breakfast is at this time, lunch is at this time, snacks are at this time. You know, that kind of thing is there. You know, they sleep at this time, get up at this time. So that you can do for 5. Before that, you don't worry about it. You know, so you just put in the time and energy. Does that make sense? So there's also, besides the cultural element, there's the element of how much are they willing to commit to putting in the time with the child. You know what I'm saying? They want the child, but then because it's a, 24/7, 360, then add a few years onto that, then, it's kind of like, well, about my life, what about me? I get, the point is you want the kid, so it's you and the kid. It's not about you, it's you and the kid. You know what I'm saying? So it's just part of the thing. So that commitment to that's also in some cultures, a major step.
Yeah, that's the typical Western disease. We're dissociated from our associations.
Yeah. But the point is that work it out. If you don't want to spend the time, have someone who does.
Yeah.
So therefore,
Well, I think in the West, it's a very common disease that parents don't want to get involved too much with the children. It's like, 20-minute interaction in a day.
yeah. So then they have to work out someone else to do the other 23 hours, 20 minutes. They're for the advantage of large families. So if you're a nuclear family, you're going to do it. A nuclear, at least there's some relief. If you're one of these, protonic families or something, atomic particle families, then it's going to be more difficult. So that's the next natural step. Is that okay? We might end up running out of time because I think we have 10 seconds. And I see Pujari's there, so it's probably that. You can remember, then we can start with it tomorrow. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada ki, Bhaktividya Purana Swami ki, Jai 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 Gaura.